Yo, what's up guys? Alf here, back with another in-depth deck guide for a deck that I've recently used to get top 5 with on the arena ladder. Now as usual there's going to be a Scryfall link down in the description, and if you click on that it'll have the deck list in full there that you can just easily import into arena if you want to try the deck out for yourself. Also as usual I'm not going to read out the text on every single card, otherwise the video would go on for ages. So if you don't know what any of the cards do, just quickly pause the video, fire up the Scryfall link and have a quick read of any of the cards that you're unfamiliar with. So with that out of the way, this is my green-white Lifegain combo deck, or an update on it anyway. I've already made a video on this deck. It was the first video I made on the channel actually, of a build that I used to get top of the ladder with last month. But I've had a ton of people ask me how I would change the deck with the addition of the new Alchemy Cards to Historic. And I finally got around to testing the deck over the past few days, tried a load of different ideas out, and I'm really happy with this current build. I think it's much stronger than the previous build, and I've been doing really well with it on the ladder. So I am going to very briefly go over the core of the deck, for those of you who don't know, but I'm mainly going to focus on the changes I've made to the deck with the new Alchemy cards and how they affect the gameplay and the general strengths and weaknesses of the deck. So for those of you who aren't aware, this is a combo deck with a bunch of Lifegain synergies. So we have Lifegain enablers in the deck, so we've got 4 Lunarch Veteran, 4 Soul Warden and 4 Prosperous Innkeeper. These are all creatures that gain us a life whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control. And the way the combo works in this deck is we need one of our Lifegain enablers, so one of Veteran, Warden or Innkeeper, alongside the Heliod and Scurry Oak. So say we have Heliod and Prosperous Innkeeper in play. If we cast the Scurry Oak from our hand, it enters the battlefield, which triggers the Innkeeper, which gains us a life, which triggers the Heliod. We put the Heliod counter onto the Scurry Oak, which then triggers the Scurry Oak and puts a 1/1 into play. The 1/1 entering play then triggers the Innkeeper, which gains us a life, which triggers the Heliod. We put the Heliod counter onto the Scurry Oak, which puts a 1/1 into play. So as you can see, we've got an infinite loop going here, where we're technically creating infinite 1/1 squirrels, gaining infinite life, and putting infinite counters onto the Scurry Oak. Now obviously since we're playing on Arena, it's not technically infinite because you don't have infinite time to do it. So basically you just do this loop as many times as you think you need to win the game, basically. Then outside of the combo, we also have Voice of the Blessed and Trellisara. These are both 2-drops that get big very quickly. They both gain a counter every time we gain a life. Voice of the Blessed gets Flying and Vigilance at 4+1/+1 counters, and at 10+1/+1 counters it gains Indestructible. So this basically just gets big really fast and then can start attacking in for huge chunks of damage in the air. And then Trellisara gets a counter every time we gain a life, but instead of that we scry one, which is really nice at just filtering through the deck, hitting lands if we need them and just digging to whatever we need. So having these two in addition to the combo basically just gives the deck another avenue of attack and another payoff for running these Lifegain enablers. Then Heliod itself obviously is part of the combo, but it's also a payoff for our Lifegain enablers as well. Every time we gain life we put a counter on something, and we can also give our creatures lifelink as well. And then Scurry Oak, pretty much just a combo card. It doesn't really synergize with any of the Lifegain stuff that we've got going on, but obviously it's essential for the combo. And then finally we've got Collected Company. So this is, I still think this is the best Collected Company deck in the format, and I still think Company is the best card in the deck as well. It can hit all of our combo pieces. It can hit our Lifegain enablers if we need them. It can hit the Voice and the Trellisara. So super powerful card. And I think this is still the best Company deck in the format. So that's the general core of the deck. That's pretty much all of the cards that I was previously running. But now I'm going to go over the 2 new cards that I've added since Alchemy, and that is Grizzled Huntmaster and Inquisitor Captain. So we'll have a look at the Huntmaster first. So this is a 3-mana 4/3, which is decent stats for a start. And when it enters the battlefield, we can exile a creature or multiple copies of that creature from our hand and replace them with copies of cards from our sideboard. So it basically gives us access to a toolbox by exiling the cards in our main deck and just enabling us to grab whatever we need out the sideboard, which is really nice in this deck specifically because this deck is very linear and rigid in what it's doing, and it kind of lacks flexibility. So this Huntmaster ability, giving us access to these nice one-offs in certain matchups, can really be nice at giving the deck a bit more flexibility where it was very rigid before. But the biggest advantage of running Huntmaster in this deck specifically is that we can use it to grab any of our combo pieces. So as you can see, one of the biggest changes I've made to the deck is we're now only running 3 copies of Heliod and 3 copies of Scurry Oak, and that's because we have 1 copy of each in the sideboard that we can grab with the Huntmaster. So if we have Soul Warden and Heliod, we can use the Huntmaster to grab Scurry Oak. If we have Lunarch Veteran and Scurry Oak, we can use the Huntmaster to grab Heliod. And we also have a single copy of Daxos in the sideboard as well, which just works as another Lifegain enabler. So say we have Heliod and Scurry Oak but no Lifegain enabler, we can then use the Huntmaster just to grab a Daxos out of the sideboard. And now Daxos is double white, but the deck is set up to cast double white stuff like Voice of the Blessed anyway, so that shouldn't really be an issue. One of the other changes I've made to the deck is we're now not running Apparition in the main deck. So Skyclave Apparition is really good, efficient removal at dealing with most of the permanents that are commonly run that are problematic against us, like Rampaging Ferocidon, Roiling Vortex, and stuff like that. Now, obviously, we can grab it off the Huntmaster. It is a little bit slower against the decks where we do need it, because obviously we need to play the Huntmaster, fetch the Apparition, and then play it. But that's not really too much of an issue from my experience, and the fact that we're running Huntmaster in matchups where Apparition isn't great just means that our linear game plan is far better, and like I said, it gives us a lot more flexibility as well. There is also a slight upside of only playing only playing 3 copies of Heliod and Scurry Oak. And that is that these are cards that we never really wanted to draw multiples of, and when we were running them as 4-ofs in the previous build, it was quite likely that we would draw multiples of them. So Huntmaster gives us a good reason to cut down to 3 as well, which just again increases the consistency, because we can dig for them when we need them off the Huntmaster, but we're not likely to draw multiples, which can kind of cause like clogged up hands in a lot of situations. And then the other card that we've added to the deck is Inquisitor Captain. So this is a 4-mana 3/3 with Vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, if there are 20 or more creatures with mana value 3 or less in our graveyard, hand, or library, we get given 2 of those cards at random, and we pick one of them to put onto the battlefield. Now we have 29 creatures with mana value 3 or less in the deck, so we're basically always going to be hitting off this Captain, even if we have a bunch of stuff on the battlefield. And while it's not quite as good as Collected Company, it is fantastic, you know, at the same sort of thing. It just gives us selection over what we need, and this deck is very synergistic, so we need, you know, if we have Lifegain enablers, we need the payoffs. If we have the payoffs, we need the enablers. And the fact that Inquisitor Captain gives us a choice means that we have really good selection over what we hit off this, and it enables us to set up our combo a lot easier, and also just enables us to dig for stuff like Huntmaster if we need to go for the sideboard, Voice of the Blessed or Trelisara if that's relevant. So Captain just gives us another nice payoff card like the Company, because one of the problems I had with this deck previously was if the opponent's running a lot of interaction, if we don't have cards like Company, we can often be left in situations where we don't have much going on. So to have another Company style effect in the deck is really nice. It also gives us another card to ramp into on turn 3 with Innkeeper, and since we're only running 3 copies in the main, we can also run a 4th copy in the sideboard that we can grab with Huntmaster. So if we don't have much else going on, or we need to dig for, you know, more than one combo piece, then going Huntmaster to grab a Captain and then start looking for our Heliods and Scurry Oaks is really nice as well. I just quickly edited in a couple of things that I forgot to say in the main deck profile, but I think are really important. So I was mentioning how if you played the previous build of this deck, you need to be thinking about Huntmaster's mana cost when you're sequencing your lands. But arguably more importantly, you also always need to remember that Huntmaster doesn't get its ability if you don't have a creature in your hand. So you always need to be thinking, before you play the last creature in your hand, is it worth it? You know, if I draw Huntmaster, or if I draw Company hitting Huntmaster, is it worth me holding on to this last creature? So always bear that in mind, you know, always be thinking before you play your last creature in hand, because not holding on to that creature and then drawing a Huntmaster or going Company into Huntmaster can be problematic if you're not thinking about that. The other thing that's really important, another big difference between this build and the last build, is in my last video I said if you go to options and gameplay, that while you're playing this deck, you might as well have this auto-order triggered abilities tick the whole time, or almost all the time, because it will save you time, it will save you clicks when you're playing the deck. However, with the recent addition of Captain and Huntmaster, you want to have this unticked pretty much the entire time you're playing the deck. The only time you want to have this ticked is when you're comboing off, so have this unticked. When you start comboing off, tick it just to save you time and clicks when you're comboing off. But the reason you want this unticked is because ordering your triggers with Captain and Huntmaster is way more important, because say for example you have Soul Warden and Scurry Oak on the battlefield and you cast your Captain. If you have your auto order triggered abilities ticked, then the Lifegain triggers will resolve before the Captain trigger, which will mean that if you hit Heliod off the Captain, you won't combo off that turn and it will pass to the opponent and it will give them a turn to interact with you. Whereas if you go options, gameplay and you untick this, and you have Soul Warden, Scurry Oak, and then you cast the Captain, you can order your triggers so that the Captain trigger resolves before the Lifegain. So in that instance, if you do hit Heliod, the Heliod comes into play off the Captain before you gain the life off the Soul Warden, and then you can combo off that turn. Or, you know, similarly, say you have Soul Warden and you cast the Captain. If you don't have your auto-ordered triggered abilities unticked, and you hit a Voice of the Blessed or Tralasara, you won't get any triggers off it. Whereas if you go Soul Warden and then you cast your Captain and you order your triggers so that the Captain resolves first, if you hit your Voice of the Blessed or Tralasara, you'll then get the Lifegain trigger resolving afterwards and you'll put an additional counter on them. So make sure you go to options, gameplay, and you have this unticked pretty much the entire time you're playing the deck. When you combo off, you want to have it ticked just to save you time and clicks. With Huntmaster, it's not as important, but there's still a couple of scenarios, because when Huntmaster enters the battlefield and you exile a creature from your hand, it will always shuffle your library. So say you have Soul Warden and Tralasara out. If you cast the Huntmaster and you don't have auto-order triggered abilities unticked, you will scry before you shuffle your library off the Huntmaster ability. So you want to make sure that in this instance you order your triggers so that the Huntmaster resolves first, you exile a card from your hand, put something in from your sideboard, and then you shuffle your library. And then you gain the life, and then you can scry, so you're not losing the scry. So just a few things to be wary of that you might not know if you were playing the previous versions of the deck. So that's the main deck. Really happy with how it's working. Mana base wise, still running 24 lands. The only change I've made is I'm running slightly more green sources, so we're running 3 overgrown farmland now, which is a bit annoying because the weakness of the slow lands is that they come into play tapped on turn 2, and curving a turn 1 Soul Warden or Lunarch Veteran into a turn 2 Voice of the Blessed or Tralasara is still really important. So overgrowing farmland does come with its drawbacks in that way, but we really need to be running more green sources now that we need double green for the Huntmaster. There is a real chance that it might be correct to go down to 7 plains and go up to 4 overgrown farmland. So if you are running into situations where you can't cast Huntmaster on curve, it might be worth going down to 7 plains and up to 4 farmlands. I've also cut the Castle Ardenvale from the deck because I felt with running more dual lands for the Huntmaster, I don't think you can afford to be running the Castle Ardenvale because Sunpetal Grove is still really important to be coming into play untapped on turn 2. And if you start running Castle Ardenvale instead of Plains, the chances that Sunpetal Grove enters tapped goes up as well. So now that we have even more stringent mana constraints than the last build, I don't feel like the deck can really afford to be running many man lands anymore. Then onto the sideboard. We've got a bunch of one-off tutor targets for the Huntmaster. The only actual sideboard cards that we bring in are 2 copies of Rest in Peace and 1 copy of Ajani. So Rest in Peace I've felt has still been very necessary, especially against a deck like Phoenix and the green-black Lurus deck. Phoenix especially, you know, I've been playing a bunch of Grizzled Huntmaster decks since Alchemy came out, and you can run Remorseful Cleric, that I'll get up quickly for those of you who don't know what this is. So Remorseful Cleric is probably the best graveyard hate that we can get off the Huntmaster. And it is pretty efficient graveyard hate as well, especially because we can activate it at instant speed, but it's just way too slow against the decks where it's relevant. You know, namely Phoenix. Having to go turn 3 Huntmaster, first of all having to use the Huntmaster activation on the Remorseful Cleric feels pretty bad for a start, but then you have to wait until the following turn to then play the Cleric and then activate it at instant speed. It's just way too slow. And against a deck like green-black Lurus as well, they can very easily just bait out the activation of Cleric and then set up their graveyard again to do the cat oven loops. So I feel like, you know, Remorseful Cleric does give Huntmaster a good way to access graveyard hate, but I feel like against the matchups where you actually want that graveyard hate, it's just way too slow. So I think Rest in Peace is still necessary, and just being able to slam this on turn 2, shut off Phoenixes and Delirium from the Phoenix deck, slows them down really a lot and helps us to stabilize, and then our proactive game plan is normally good enough to race in those scenarios. And then similarly, you know, the green-black Lurrus deck does tend to run ways to shut it down, but again, I just felt like Remorseful Cleric was way too slow and also way too vulnerable to interaction as well. So I think Rest in Peace is still very necessary in the deck. And then the single copy of Ajani, first of all, it's a Planeswalker, so it helps in the control matchups. The +1 and the -2 both synergize really well with what we're trying to do in the deck. You know, making a Primate token when we have loads of life gain enablers is great. But we're mainly interested in the 0 ability here. This is mainly for matchups where we need to be able to sweep the board. You know, in the mirror match, for example, if the opponent's comboing off and we have a Soul Warden and a Trelasara, just running the single Ajani in the deck means that we can scry through our whole deck while the opponent's comboing off, top the Ajani, and then play it and 0 and sweep the board. Same thing against a deck like Goblins, and also the Bant Inquisitor Blink decks that have been around recently, especially the Yorion builds that are really explosive. Having this as a way to just sweep their board is a great way to stabilize against those sorts of decks as well. So I feel like Ajani really necessary for those sorts of matchups. Then the rest of the sideboard is all one-ofs for the Huntmaster, so we're never boarding these in, because if you do, you just lose access to it off the Huntmaster ability. So first of all, we've got Giant Killer, which is a tutorable way to kill big creatures, which is great against stuff like Korvold from Jund Food, Niv and Territorial Carvu in the Niv matchups, but it's mainly here as a way to deal with Serra's Emissary from the Creativity decks, because without running Giant Killer, you don't have any way to beat them going Creativity into Serra's Emissary, naming creature. And the fact that we're running this off the Huntmaster means that we actually have a way to beat that game 1, which was one of the biggest problems of the deck in that matchup beforehand, is that game 1 you basically just lose if you can't combo off before they can get their Emissary down. Whereas now we have main deck access to the Giant Killer to kill it, which is really nice. And you know, if the opponent's just playing any problematic big creature, we can use this to kill it and then play it as a creature and start tapping down the opponent's creatures. Daxos, I've already kind of gone over. This is basically just a life gain enabler for if we don't have one of our Soul Warden, Veteran or Innkeeper in order to combo off. One copy of Skyclave Cleric. This is here basically as a tutorable land. So 24 lands is usually enough for us to hit our 4th land drop on curve for our Collected Company or Captain. But there will always be scenarios where you don't hit your 4th land drop, and being able to pull a land off the Huntmaster is really nice in those scenarios. I have also very occasionally played this on the creature side. You know, if we're against a very aggressive deck and we only have 2 mana spare and we just need to get a creature down and gain a bit of life, can be useful in those scenarios, but basically mainly here is land. Heliod, similar to the Daxos, is just part of our combo that we can tutor. Apparition I've already gone over, but just really important to have access to it to kill stuff like Rampaging Ferocidon, Roiling Vortex, or just anything that we need to exile. Great to have it there as a target. Scarioke, same thing as Heliod and Daxos, just here for part of the combo. Inquisitor Captain, again the 4th copy here just to be able to tutor up, and if we don't have 2 of our combo pieces, this is just a great card to get. It's just as a generic card to tutor for what we need. Archon of Absolution, first of all, fantastic against the mono-white humans deck. They really struggle to beat this card. It's also surprisingly good against the Bant Inquisitor Captain decks, because pretty much all of their removal is white, and they tend to win by going very wide. So Archon of Absolution is a really good way of stabilizing against those the Bant Inquisitor Captain decks as well. And just even in the mirror, you know, game 1, if the opponent is comboed off, we can Huntmaster, grab Archon of Absolution, and then they won't be able to attack him with all their squirrels because they don't have enough mana to pay for the attacks. So Archon can be a good way to stabilize against an opponent who has already comboed off in the mirror match. Then we've got Shifting Ceratops and Toski. So these are here both mainly for the control matchups, and it might seem weird to have 2 different tutor targets for control, but control is one of the harder matchups for the deck, and they're both kind of needed in different scenarios. So Shifting Ceratops is a card that is very good if you have more of an empty board. You know, if you don't have much going on, but you need to pressure opponents' planeswalkers or just present a threat that's very difficult for them to interact with, Shifting Ceratops is great in that scenario. But against control, our biggest weakness in general is sweepers, And so if we already have creatures on board, then Toski is much better to grab, because we can get the Toski, play it, attacking with our creatures to start drawing cards, and if the opponent then does play a Wrath of God, then the Toski survives it and we can continue to pressure the opponent. So it's really nice having these two different options, because on an empty board against control, Toski is pretty bad, and on a board where we already have creatures, shifting Ceratops is pretty bad because it also dies to a sweeper. So I think it is very important to have these both there, because if you just have one of them, if you have creatures on board and you play a Ceratops, the opponent sweeps the board and you're kind of screwed in that scenario. And if you have an empty board and you grab Toski, it's very easy for them to just go to Fairy, minus it, and then you're kind of screwed as well. So I really like having access to both of these. And they do have some applications in other matchups. You know, shifting Ceratops is really, really good against the mono blue tempo decks as well. If you're trying to stabilize, you can just play this and give it reach to just block in the air all the time until you've stabilized. And then Toski can also be useful if you just want to generate card advantage in other matchups as well. Then we've got one copy of Yasharn, best card against the sacrifice decks, which can be quite a tough matchup if their interaction lines up well against you. And then finally we've got one copy of Elder Gargaroth, which is just, I wanted a card that sort of gave the deck another avenue of attack. You know, Inquisitor Captain is a card that is generally good if you haven't got anything in particular going on at starting to dig for your combo pieces and whatnot. But I kind of wanted a card that presented a threat on a different axis to how the deck's operating, if that makes sense. And it has been decent. The only other card I've been considering running in this last slot is Realm Cloak Giant. So Realm Cloak Giant is a tutorable sweeper. And this is good, you know, against mirror matches if they've comboed off, against decks like the Bant Inquisitor deck or mono red goblins or elves as well. But in a lot of those matchups, I felt like Archon of Absolution does a very similar thing in stabilizing against wide boards. The only reason that I would want to run Realm Cloak Giant over those is it gives us an out to multiple Serra's Emissaries against the creativity decks. So if the opponent goes creativity for X equals 2 and they name one Serra's Emissary on creature and the other one on instant, then we don't have an out to that, unfortunately. You know, we can keep comboing off and hope to deck them out, but that's kind of miserable and takes a very long time. Giant Killer no longer works in those scenarios, so if creativity is very popular, and specifically the Serra's Emissary builds, then you could consider running Realm Cloak Giant over Gargaroth. But for now, I'm preferring Gargaroth as just a card that gives the deck sort of another avenue of attack, and can also be just generically good against red decks that don't really have a good way to deal with it. So that's the new version of the deck. I've been really happy with it. If you've got any questions at all, drop me a comment below. Now on to the gameplay. I've just got a couple matches that I've been playing on the ladder with it, so hope you enjoy. Big up. Okay, sweet. So we get to go first here, and yeah, this hand looks sweet. Turn 1 Soul Warden into turn 2 Voice of the Blessed, turn 3 Heliod, and then if we can draw another creature, we can use this Huntmaster to grab a Scurry Oak. You know, that's best case scenario, but still really nice curve out here. See what the opponent's on. Okay, Pelt Collector, so probably Gruul, I'd imagine. Definitely want to get the Voice of the Blessed out here before they can kill the Soul Ward and make this into a 3-3 so it dodges Bonecrusher Giant. Now if they play any creatures here, it's so good for us. The one thing we want to avoid is Bonecrusher Giant on the Soul Warden. That's kind of the worst case scenario, but even then it's not too bad. Okay, that's unfortunate. They did have the Bonecrusher Giant, but still got decent options here. So I definitely think we'll play Heliod out here, because if we draw Scurry Oak we can combo off with the Innkeeper next turn, and also I think playing Huntmaster early there is a mistake, because we could need the Innkeeper if we draw another creature that we don't need. Oh, okay. So I'm very, very glad we didn't play the Huntmaster last turn, because we now kind of need to use this Huntmaster to get Skyclave Apparition to deal with that Ferocidon. So yeah, we kind of have to get Apparition here. I'm just going to double check to make sure there's not any other better options, but yeah, pretty sure Apparition's the pick here. And then we'll pass the turn back. And the good thing about Apparition here is it turns Heliod into a creature, So if they tap out here, well, we'll see what they do first, but we could set up... hold on, I'm just checking I've got my my triggers set up correctly. Okay, Spellbreaker. Yeah, it could set up Heliod as a creature, which could be really good on the defense. See if they attack with anything here. Okay, sweet. So drawing another land isn't great, but we can Apparition the Ferocidon here. Heliod becomes a creature. And then we're definitely going to attack with the Huntmaster here because we can give it lifelink. And then we can put a counter onto the Apparition, which then puts it out of stomp range, which means that Heliod's definitely going to stay a creature. Now there is something to be said about attacking with Heliod here, but I feel against a Gruul deck where they could very well have Embercleave, that might give them a way to win, if that makes sense. But again, maybe it was correct to attack with the Heliod, but I'm pretty happy with this. We can give the Huntmaster lifelink, we can then put the counter onto the Apparition, which puts it out of Bone Crusher range. I don't think they'd be running a Braid or anything like that in the main deck, so this basically means that this Heliod is going to stay an indestructible creature, which is going to be really difficult for them to beat, even with Embercleave. Oh wow, okay. Sweet, we'll take that. I mean, we didn't really have much going on there because we just drew lands, but it is going to be very difficult for them to beat an indestructible Heliod. So yeah, sideboarding wise, the only cards that we ever consider boarding in are Rest in Peace and Ajani, and I definitely don't think this is the matchup for either of those. That Apparition, yeah, I think that does highlight that, you know, having to go Huntmaster into Apparition is a little bit slower, but the upside of having a toolbox of the Huntmaster and it making our deck a bit more streamlined, only having to run 3 Scurry Oak and 3 Apparition, is a really nice upside. And then, you know, obviously it is a little bit slower having to go Huntmaster to grab Apparition like we did in that last match to get rid of the Ferocidon, but I think that added flexibility is really nice. And also, in my old build there were definitely matchups where Apparition wasn't really doing all that much, whereas Huntmaster is always going to be good as long as we keep a creature in hand. Okay, this hand is pretty bad. We're not keeping that. This hand's okay. I think we have to keep this, and we'll probably put back Voice of the Blessed here because, you know, we have Lifegain Enabler, Heliod, and Scurry Oak, and I think we need the Huntmaster as a way to grab Apparition in case they do have a Ferocidon again. You know, if they're running some in the main, I imagine they're running more in the sideboard, so this is definitely a matchup where we'll need access to the Apparition, I think. Okay, so we'll play the Innkeeper here. Double Pelt Collector is kind of scary because that can get big really, really fast here. Yeah, so they're already getting in for a decent amount of damage here. Okay, so I think we'll almost definitely play Heliod here because, you know, we're currently facing down 7 damage. They need to get 5 extra damage on the board here for us to, or kill the Innkeeper for us not to win next turn, which, you know, 5 extra damage is definitely possible from a Gruul deck. But if they don't have 5 extra damage here, we can just win with Scurry Oak. Oh, wow. Okay, that's exactly 5 extra damage. Wow, that's unfortunate. So we have to block with the Innkeeper here, or we're dead. And then... wow, this is going to be tough. That's frustrating though. If we'd had 1 point or one higher life there, we would have probably won this turn with the Scurry Oak. So we have to Huntmaster here. I think we'll exile the other Huntmaster because if we draw a Lifegain Enabler we can win with the Scurry Oak, but we'd love to go and grab Daxos here, but that's definitely not enough. You know, we can get Skyclave Cleric here. Gain 2 life, which gives us another Heliod counter, but even then I don't know if that's enough. I just don't think we can go for Daxos. I mean, I don't know if Skyclave Cleric will be enough either, but at least if we go Skyclave Cleric, we can put a counter on the Huntmaster, and that might trick the opponent into not attacking. I think that's our best shot, but I mean, we're almost certainly dead here. So we go up to 5. If they attack him with everything, we block. Yeah, that's nowhere near enough. I mean, we're almost certainly dead here, but... Okay, yeah, we're very, very dead. But that was close, you know. If we'd had one more life the turn they played that last Spellbreaker, we would have won with the Scurry Oak the next turn, but... wasn't to be. In general, I feel pretty good about this matchup though. As long as we can dodge Ferocidon, we should be good. This hand is sick. We've got turn 3 Captain and we've got Huntmaster to dig for stuff as well, so this hand looks good. Just checking my my triggers were set up right again. Because that's one thing with playing this deck. If you've comboed off and you've turned the auto trigger abilities on, you need to remember to turn it off again. And I have lost multiple games forgetting to do that and ordering my captain triggers wrong, so I always just like to double check before playing my captains and my Huntmasters. So we'll play the Innkeeper here, set up for the captain play next turn. Okay, double Burning Tree. I mean, I'm glad we've got the Soul Warden here to give us a bit of life buffer. Okay, Bone Crusher the Soul Warden. So at least we've still got one Lifegain enabler on the battlefield. Makes a lot of the hits off Captain better here. So we need... This is a position where ordering our Captain trigger is very important. And this is why, you know, we'll hit the Voice of the Blessed here, and because we ordered our triggers this way, it becomes a 4-4 instead of a 3-3. Which is actually, you know, it can make a very big difference. One extra counter closer to flying. And it dodges a Braid now as well, which is a card they'd probably like to have brought in against us. So next time we can play the Huntmaster, and I think we're probably going to be grabbing an Apparition here. Okay, especially now they've got Vortex, you know, but we knew they were playing Ferocidon, so I think grabbing Apparition would have been a safe bet, but now... Okay, wow, that's a great draw. So yeah, we can give the Voice of the Blessed flying here, and use Huntmaster to grab an Apparition as well. And the other thing is with, you know, Huntmaster grabbing Apparition, the decks where we'd usually want Apparition are creature decks, where Huntmaster as a 4-3 is a pretty good blocker anyway, so even though it is obviously slower doing it this way, it's not as bad as you might think, because a 4-3 blocker can do a lot of work in those matchups where Apparition's good. Definitely attacking with Voice of the Blessed. I think I might want to attack with the Captain here as well. You know, they could very easily double block with the Burning Tree Emissary, but against a Gruul deck, if they block with one of the Burning Tree Emissary, well, if they double block here, we can, you know, we're taking out one of their creatures, and then they can't, even if they go land, they can't go land Embercleave because they only have 2 creatures left, so... Okay, another Burning Tree. Well, that would trigger the Soul Warden. I don't think they have anything that can kill Voice of the Blessed here. Okay, sound. So we should win this then. I mean, they did get stuck on 2 lands, which obviously helped. You know, if they could activate the Roiling Vortex last turn to stop us gaining life, this game's a little bit more difficult for sure, but we'll definitely take that. So yeah, well, Apparition, this is another point where ordering your triggers makes a big difference as well. I mean, they can't even activate the Roiling Vortex, but if they had been able to, ordering your triggers there is important. So sweet. Okay, sweet, here we go. Sweet, so we get to go first. I don't think we can keep that. Too many lands there. Yeah, this looks good, but I think we probably have to put back the Huntmaster just because we don't have double green here yet. The rest looks good though. We've got turn 3 Company here potentially. Okay, Fetid Pools, so probably Control, I'd imagine. Maybe Grixis. So far just blue black though, so we'll attack him first here. They're probably running Archmage's Charm. I don't want to play Company main phase because blue black's more likely to run Censor. Okay, now they consider I'm happy to company now, because they're 2 turns away from a sweeper. I very much doubt they run Spell Pierce. So we definitely want Heliod here. Huntmaster's interesting, but I think against blue-black, where they're more likely to have Fatal Push as their removal, I'm happy going Soul Warden here, because unless they have a counter... if they don't have a counter spell for Scurry Oak next turn, if they just have Fatal Push as their removal, which is quite likely, then they can't kill the Scurry Oak. And since we have 2 Lifegain enablers in play, they won't be able to stop us comboing off. So they either need a counter spell or something like an eliminate or something here. So let's see. Archmage's Charm. Okay, I still think that was the correct play though, because if they don't have Archmage's Charm there and they're relying on Fatal Push, we just get to combo off. So. And I'm not sure what we would have got with Huntmaster there either. So here I'm happy to go Innkeeper to start off with. You know, we start getting a bunch of Heliod triggers. And we've already got, you know, after these Heliod triggers we've got a decent amount of power into play already. So I think we'll start spreading the counters about here just so we don't get blown up by Fatal Push as much. And I think I'm happy playing Trelisara here. You know, if this resolves, we get 3 Scries, and if we can Scry to a green land, even if they have a sweeper, like an Extinction Event or a Languish or something like that, we will then be able to cast Huntmaster with them tapped out and grab either a Tusky or a Ceratops or something like that. Syncopate, okay, that's worth noting that they have. Sweeper could be a bit rough here, but we'll see what they've got. You know, if they have a Sweeper and we draw a green land, it's great. Even if not, we get Voice of the Blessed in play, which isn't the end of the world. Okay, so Shark Typhoon, even though it's cycles for 0, we still get a Warden and Heliod trigger here. So still spreading the counters out so I don't get blown up by Fatal Push as much. Okay, so nothing from the opponent, and a land there is great. I think committing to the board, we've already got, what, 7 power in play here, so I think committing to the board anymore is a bit greedy. So we'll just attack in, and I think we'll give both of our 3/3s lifelink here, just to put an extra 2 powers worth on the board if they don't have anything. Okay, wow, they go down to 4, and we get 2 counters, so I think we want to make one of our creatures a 5/5 here just to play around Languish. Actually, thinking about it, I probably should have put the counters on the Warden there, because if they have any more Shark Typhoons, we'll get more Lifegain triggers, and more importantly, if they have Extinction Event here, we're left with a 3/3 Warden rather than a 5/5. If we'd have put the counters on the Warden... Ah, okay, wow, they did have it. So yeah, if we put the counters on the Warden, if they name even, we have a 5/5 Soul Warden, and if they name odd, we're left with a 1/1 and a 3/3, which is enough for lethal. I mean, if either of our creatures resolve here, we make Warden a 4/4, so Fatal Push is kind of what will get the opponent another turn at least anyway. So I think we'll probably grab Shifting Ceratops. Oh, okay, sweet, that was enough. So yeah, we did misplay there. We probably should have put the 2 counters on the Warden, but it's kind of minor. Against control, we definitely want a Ajani, and we'll probably just trim an Innkeeper, and that'll be it for sideboarding. So yeah, that last game, like I was saying, I think it was definitely a safer option to put the counters on the Soul Warden there, but I wasn't really thinking. And in general, you know, I think even though Huntmaster means that we're running less dedicated control stuff, like in my last build I was running Gideon, Blackblade and Thalia in the sideboard. Now with the cheater targets there's obviously less space to run specific stuff for control. But Huntmaster's really powerful because if it ever resolves, we can just grab a Ceratops or Tusky, which is uncounterable, so... And it's not too difficult to force a Huntmaster through against control either, so... Okay, so we can't keep this. You can never really keep a 1-land hand with this deck. This, on the 6, I think we have to keep. You know, I think it's a good hand as long as we can draw lands here. If we don't draw our 3rd land, obviously it's a problem. And yeah, Huntmaster's not a great draw here because it's another card that we can't cast until we draw land 3, but we've got a couple turns to draw the land, so... And these are all good cards against control anyway. I mean, Captain's a bit vulnerable to counter spells, but Okay, Tridossauro is not bad. If we can resolve this, then we can start scrying for lands, which is great. So we'll attack first. And just really hope they don't have a counterspell here. Okay, they do. So we know they're running Syncopate. Blue-black also, from my experience, tends to run the Censor more often than the blue-white or Jeskai builds, so that's another card we need to bear in mind as well. Oh man, we didn't draw a land. I mean, at least that's a castable card and it gives us a treasure, but missing land drops against control is brutal. Okay, so we'll pass the turn here. So yeah, we're already behind, but the opponent's deck does look quite slow, so... Oh wow, that was a terrible draw. So I don't think we can afford to play anything here, really. Because if we play Huntmaster or Heliod and it gets countered, we're back down to 2 mana, which is terrible. I think, you know, we can't attack either, because if they have Shark Typhoon, we lose our creatures, which is not worth the risk. Like I say, if we play any of our 3 drops, any counterspell puts us back to 2 mana. So I think what we have to do here is just wait until we have our 3rd land, and then fire off these companies. Because, like I said, if we play Heliod or Huntmaster and it gets countered, these companies are not getting cast. Oh wow, okay, that was a terrible draw as well. So yeah, again, we're still can't attack, and we're just waiting on this 3rd land. If we hit the 3rd land though, you know, double company isn't bad, but I think we might be too far behind already here. Okay, sweet, there's the 3rd land. That was crucial. I think any longer and we probably would have been way too far behind. At least we have, you know, a shout here. Okay, the opponent doesn't scry there with Castlard and Veil, so that, Castle Vantress, sorry, so that makes me almost certain they'll have a counterspell here. But at least now we have 3 mana, so even though we use up the treasure, we can still play Huntmaster. So if they tap out, you know, if it's Archmage's Charm here, which it is, if they have another Archmage's Charm as their counterspell, we can still get away with the Huntmaster here. And I think while they are off triple blue, we could, actually now we've drawn a land, I think Captain's probably the better play. You know, if they have Archmage's Charm as their other counterspell in hand, they're less vulnerable. You know, if they have mana up for counterspells, I much rather prefer Accompanying during their turn, but since they're off Archmage's Charm here, I like going Captain. So Scurry Oak, we have Heliod in hand, but I don't think Heliod's ever going to resolve here. Whereas at least, you know, since we ordered our triggers this way, Voice of the Blessed, I think it's a 5/5 here. Oh no, it's a 6/6. So this again, it plays around Languish, which I'm not sure they're playing yet, but I think it's better to go like this. You know, if we'd gone Scurry Oak, I'm pretty certain Heliod's never resolving here, so... Okay, so not Languish, they have Extinction Event, so naming even will be left with just a Soul Warden, which isn't great here. But, I mean, they've only got 2 mana up, which means that the only counterspells they could have is Syncopate and Censor, so we get to resolve Huntmaster here. So we can Huntmaster and grab a Ceratops. I guess they could have Aether Gust. No, okay. So I think we'll pitch the other Huntmaster here. I like keeping Heliod just in case we draw the Scurry Oak and manage to pull the combo out of nowhere. I mean, Toski is a consideration, but I feel like we're already too far behind. And I feel like with company, Ceratops is better because, you know, they're more likely to... Well, with company we can bait out sweepers, and then playing Ceratops after a sweeper is generally when you want to go for it. Because, I mean, I guess black has more removal that can hit the Ceratops, but generally their main way of removing it is with sweepers. So I think here we'll attack only with the Huntmaster. They could make a 5/5 Shark, but I think they're less likely to do that because they're tapped out then. Whereas if we attack with the Soul Warden, they could make a 2/2 Shark and still keep mana up. And I think I'm happier to, I don't want to play Ceratops out when we already have 5 power in play, because we just get completely blown out by a sweeper at that point. You know, if they have an Extinction Event or a Languish, that's a blowout. Whereas this way, we already have 5 power in play, so the onus is on them to do something. We could play Company here, now that they don't have mana up for Archmage's Charm, but I think, again, that makes us too vulnerable to a sweeper. Like I said, we already have 5 power in play, so the onus is on them to do something about it. And if we keep holding mana up as well, they're much more incentivized to not tap out because they think we have the Company, which we do. So we'll see what they do here. Okay, so I imagine this is going to get countered, but I didn't want to play it during my turn because then we do just get completely blown out by a sweeper. They gust it. Okay, well, we'll definitely top that. And again, I think, you know, it's not worth losing the Soul Warden here just for an extra point of damage. And same deal as last time, I think it's better off just holding the Company here rather than playing Ceratops. Again, we could play Company now they're tapped out, but especially with them getting the Deluge effect, if they didn't have a sweeper before, they're much more likely to have one now anyway. Okay, removal spell for the Warden. I think we'll Company now, because if we hit the combo, we don't want to... Well, we can hit the combo now, you know what I mean. If they take that out and then we hit Heliod's Scurry Oak off the Company, that's kind of brutal, so... Didn't hit it, but we did hit the Voice of the Blessed here. We could have gone for Huntmaster, but we've already got good stuff in hand, so I'm not sure what else we'd want to dig for. And at least this way, you know, we haven't seen Languish yet, but at least this plays around Languish. And if they go for Extinction Event, they can only take out one of the Huntmaster or Voice of the Blessed, so I feel pretty good about that Company. So if they do Extinction Event, they probably have to name... Oh, they do have Languish, okay. So yeah, I'm very happy with that play then. Voice of the Blessed survives. And now they're on triple blue. I think we might be able to get away with playing Ceratops here. You know, the only way we get punished for playing the Ceratops here, or the only way the opponent survives here, really, is if they have... They need Shark Typhoon into a way to kill both of our creatures, because even if they have Shark Typhoon, we're definitely going to be putting them down to 4 here. So they have to have Shark Typhoon for a start. And then if they do have it, they then need a way to kill both of our creatures next turn to survive. Okay, so they have the Shark Typhoon. Okay, so we just got to pray they don't have 2 removal spells or Extinction Event. You know, if they have Extinction Event, that's brutal. See if they have it. Oh, wow. Okay. I still think that was the right play though, because they needed exactly Typhoon into removal for both the creatures there to survive. Gave us our best shot of winning. So land means that we can go Heliod into Company here. Now obviously, they could very well have Syncopate or Censor, but Censor we haven't seen yet, and also I feel like if they had Censor, since we've had quite a lot of mana recently, I feel like they would have started cycling it by now. So Syncopate we do get blown out by, but I think it's worth the risk here. Oh wow, they do have Censor as well. I mean, I would have thought they would have started cycling them before now, unless they just drew that for turn. Is it worth bluffing? I mean, we already have 6 mana in play. I don't think playing an extra land really does anything, and I think, you know, holding on to it will give the opponent the impression that we have something like a Company here, which will make them less likely to use their Castle Ardenvale. Oh, maybe not. Okay, so they have a 4-4 in play, but that's not going to kill us for a while. We still have potential good top decks, but I feel like, you know, especially with those Deluges in the graveyard, the opponent probably has answers to whatever we draw here, especially if we keep drawing lands like that. Definitely worth holding on to the Scurry Oak here in case we draw a Huntmaster, or in case we draw a Lifegain Enabler. We can try them both in the same turn. You know, again, at this point in the game, I'm pretty sure it's not going to work, but it's better than just playing Scurry Oak out and it getting killed. You know, if we play, if they have a handful of creature removal, it's just giving them a target for it. And like I said as well, if we draw a Huntmaster, there's a chance we can go Huntmaster, grab Ceratops, and that could potentially win the game. You know, if they don't have a counterspell for the Huntmaster, that could be a line to win. Okay, so Captain, I mean, I'll play a land first, just because they do have Syncopate. I'll make them tap out for more, but I'm pretty certain that this isn't going to resolve. You know what, they have 7 cards in hand, so, and they haven't really done much, so they must just be holding on to a load of interaction. Yeah, okay. So Syncopate for 5, we can't pay for that obviously, and they still have mana up for Archmage's Charm. So again, we're not going to play the Scurry Oak out here, just in case we draw Huntmaster or... I mean, even if we draw another Lifegain Enabler, I'm pretty certain that it's not gonna win. They'll probably have some kind of removal to stop the combo, but you never know. Oh, there we go. Okay. So again, I'm pretty certain this isn't gonna work, but might as well go for it, just on the off chance that they have 7 lands in hand or something. No, okay. I mean, at least since that was Lunarch Veteran, we get to play another creature from the graveyard, but... Okay, they gust the Scurry Oak. Huh. Is that the best thing to have on top? Is it better than a random card? I mean, we've already used, what, 3 Companies and 2 Inquisitor Captains, so the chances of us drawing 3rd Captain or 4th Company are very low. Whereas for Scurry Oak to be reasonable, we only need to draw 1 of our Lifegain Enablers, so I think it's probably best just to top it here. Because we're much more likely to draw a Lifegain Enabler than Company or Inquisitor. Ah, they're going to Field of Ruin to shuffle our library anyway, sure. Just grab a Plains. Actually, that was probably a mistake. We probably should have gone Forest there, because if we go... yeah, if we go Huntmaster, grab Ceratops. If we'd gone Forest there, we could have gone Huntmaster, grab Ceratops, and give it haste all in the same turn. And we already have more than enough white, so we definitely should have grabbed a Forest off that Field of Ruin there. But again, I mean, this is pretty hypothetical. I very much doubt it will come to that. But to play optimally, we should have got a Forest there. Okay, Innkeeper. Not the best draw. Actually, wait, I shouldn't. Oh man, that was really stupid. I shouldn't. So we obviously should have held on to that, because if we drew that, well, first of all, it's just giving the opponent a target for all the removal they're probably holding on to. But secondly, if we draw a Huntmaster, we want to have that in hand to be able to pitch to it. And also, if we draw a Scurry Oak, we want to at least be able to cast them both in the same turn. So if the opponent needs double removal, but yeah, we definitely should have held on to that for Huntmaster, because, you know, if we hadn't made those last 2 mistakes, if we'd gone Forest and held on to that, if we drew a Huntmaster, we could potentially have gone Huntmaster, pitch the Innkeeper for a Ceratops, and then attack with haste, and their Shark Typhoon, oh, come on. Punished for it. Yeah, if their Shark Typhoon and Hall of Storm Giants can't block the Ceratops, so if we hadn't made those 2 plays, we could have had an out here potentially. Okay, so I mean, it didn't end up mattering anyway, but definitely worth bearing in mind that was, we had a line there and we didn't play into it very well going into game 3. But I mean, other than that, other than those last 2 mistakes, I feel like I played that game fairly well. I think the turning point in that game was where they had to have Shark Typhoon into Extinction Event. Well, and also we were stuck on 2 lands for ages that game as well, so considering that, it was surprisingly close. So yeah, this hand looks pretty sweet. You know, Huntmaster, getting Huntmaster down on turn 3 is going to be hard. I mean, I guess they are running Censor and Syncopate, so they could counter the Huntmaster, but I feel like Huntmaster is very good in these matchups because it can pull the Ceratops or Toski if they do let it resolve. So we'll definitely slam the Voice of the Blessed here. Put a bunch of power into play quickly. So I think we'll just, they could have Syncopate or Sense about if they don't getting to resolve. Yeah, sweet. So it looks like we get to resolve this. And I think here we're probably better off getting Toski, because the only real way they have of removing it is Extinction Event, which they're 2 turns away from. So if we can resolve the Toski and both these creatures are still alive, we're getting to draw 2. And even if they have if they don't have Extinction Event, Toski is going to be a nightmare for them. And even if they do, we'll likely get to draw 2 here, which is, good enough value off what we get off it. So we'll slam the Toski here, and potentially draw 2, which is great. Oh no, okay. I forgot they were running that. Damn, that's annoying. But I mean, even if I'd remembered that they were running that, I think I would have still done the same play, because they need to have exactly Ray of Enfeeblement that turn, or we get to draw 2, which is a really big swing. That's a pretty big card advantage. Okay, so I think we'll attack first here. See if they have any interaction, and then while it does play into a sweeper a bit, I think I'm happy playing Huntmaster, because if they counter it, we're playing less into a sweeper and we bait out one of their counter spells, and if they don't counter it and they do have a sweeper, we get to resolve the Huntmaster here. Now Captain is pretty good as sort of a follow-up play to a sweeper if they do have one, but I think I like cashing it in for a Ceratops here, because Ceratops is perfect on an empty board, because they kind of need another sweeper or like a non-fatal push removal spell to deal with it. Okay, so they're obviously digging for a sweeper here. See if they hit one. Or they already have one and they just didn't want to counter the Huntmaster. Okay, Extinction Event. So that's a bit rough. We do lose all of our creatures, but we do have Ceratops here. Oh, and Company. Okay. I think we're probably better off passing and going Company, because that way it plays around sweepers a bit better. Or, if we go Ceratops and they have an answer to it, like a sweeper, we don't really want to play Company in our turn after that, because that's also vulnerable to sweeper, and if we don't play Company during our turn, then we give them an opportunity to counter it. So I think it's better doing it this way round. So we don't really want to use Huntmaster, because I think Ceratops is the best thing we could have here. And I think I'm pretty happy just casting the Ceratops here, because they need, multiple removal spells here. Okay, they have Soul Shatter. That is an answer for the Ceratops, but if they don't have an answer for the other two, we put them down to 2 here. And then they kind of need a sweeper, and then we still have another threat to follow that up with. Okay, sweet. So Veteran's a great draw here, because we can get another Ceratops. And they're only down to 2 cards now as well, and they've used a lot of interaction, so see what they have. I mean, they have got a lot of mana. So I think we'll play another Pathway here, and we'll play Ceratops, just in case they have some, we might need to give Ceratops Trample if they're running any flash creatures that are black. Okay, Gust. I mean, that's pretty good, because it turns their Hall of Storm Giants off. They need to have a removal spell here, and then even if they do, we then have Ceratops with haste the following turn, so they need to draw a removal spell into a Soul Shatter or something to survive here. Okay, sweet. Oh, that was a long one. Got there in the end though.